Welcome to our Week 4 micro lecture, Percentages and Their Applications in Business. Our Week 4 objectives are relationship of percent to fractions and decimals, converting decimals to percent, converting percent to decimals, solving percent problems for portion, solving percent problems for rate, and solving percent problems for base. Let's take a look at the relationship of percents to fractions and decimals. With fractions, the denominator represents how many times a whole is divided. We talked about this when we were working with fractions. And then the numerator describes how many of the fractional parts are being used. So in this case, denominator whole, 8 parts, we're using 5 of them. With decimals, a denominator is not needed. This is because the number of decimal places used indicates how many times a whole is divided. So, 25 hundredths. 25 divided by 100, so 25. And then a percent is yet another way of expressing a fractional amount. The word percent means per 100. A percentage is a quantity expressed on the basis of 100. So 25% is 25 of 100. 25 of 100. Let's look at converting decimals to percent. Step 1. We multiply the decimal by 100. And to do that, it's really very easy. We can just simply move the decimal point 2 places to the right, and that's the same as multiplying a decimal by 100. Step 2, we write the percent sign after the number. Let's take a look at this. So we have 0.25. We're going to multiply that by 100, so that means we take this decimal point, we move it over, and so it's going to equal 25, and then write the percent sign. So 0.25 equals 25%. Okay, so we're starting with the whole number 25 now. Again, the whole number, understood, we don't write a decimal after a whole number unless we're changing it. So our decimal place would be here. If we move it over 2, we'd add 2 zeros. So it'd equal 2,500, and then add the percent sign. 25 thousandths, again, that's a decimal. We're going to change that to a percent. We move the percent sign, we move the decimal point 2 places to the right. The zeros can be between the 2 and the 5. So it's going to equal 2.5. Add the percent sign. We have a step 3 if there's a fraction involved. So if we have a fraction involved, we cannot take the fraction immediately to a percent. So the first step is converting that fraction to a decimal. We looked at how to do that last week. So just a quick reminder, it would be 3 divided by 4. The decimal would go up. We do the division. We get 0.75. Now that we have a decimal, same thing. We move the decimal place 2 places to the right, get the 75, add the percent sign. Converting percents to decimals. Just sort of taking it back the other direction. So the first step in converting is removing the percent sign. Step 2 would be to divide by 100. So if we multiply, we move it to the right. When we divide by 100, we move the decimal point 2 places to the left, and then we would add zeros as necessary. So we have 25%. First step, remove the percent sign. Second step, divide this by 100. So divide would take that decimal point that's sort of understood because this is a whole number, and it would become 0.25. Okay, we have 2,500%. Step 1, remove the percent sign. Step 2, move the decimal 2 places to the left. So that's going to be between the 5 and the 0. So equals 25. 2.5%, convert that to a decimal. Remove the percent sign. Move the decimal 2 places to the left. We're going to have to add a 0 for the placeholder. Equals 0.025. Step 3, If the percent is a fraction, so you might have 2/3 percent, you have to change the fraction to the decimal equivalent. So 2 divided by 3, 0.67, but this is a percent, so 0.67%. Once we have the 0.67%, we can again remove the percent sign, take the percent 2 places to the left because we're changing it to a decimal, and it's going to equal 0.0067. Solving basic percent problems. Now that we have learned to manipulate percents, let's look at some of their practical applications in business. Percent problems involve the use of equations known as percent formulas. These formulas are going to have 3 variables. The first one is going to be the base, and that's a number that represents 100% or a total value of something. Another number in percent problems is going to be called the portion, and that number represents a part of the base. And then the third piece that we need, rate. Rate is the number with the percent sign or the word percent. So rate is really easy to find. So these are called variables, base, portion, and rate, and we have 3 variables. 2 of the 3 are going to be known, and the third is going to be unknown, and we're going to solve for the unknown. So let's take a look at how we can do that. Percentage formulas that are used to solve percent problems. So the first one, if I'm solving for portion, that means I don't know what the portion is, which means that is going to be the unknown, so I have to know what the rate and the base is. The rate and the base. I need to know those 2. So again, the formula is P equals R times B, or portion equals rate times the base. So when we know the rate, we know the base, we can solve for the portion. So if we don't know the rate, that means our 2 knowns are going to be the portion and the base. So rate equals portion divided by base. We just plug in the numbers. Portion divided by base, we would find the rate. And then if I'm solving for the base, that means I don't know what the base is. That means I have to know the portion, and I'm going to divide that by the rate. So base equals portion divided by rate. So identify the 2 knowns and the unknown. That's our first step. So if I know the portion and the rate, that means my unknown is going to be the base. If I don't know the portion, that means my 2 knowns are going to be the rate and the base. So again, step 1, identify the 2 knowns and the unknown. And we'll take a look at how to do that in just a minute. Step 2, choose the formula. And so very basic, these are our 3 formula types. If I'm solving for portion, I'm going to use rate times base. Solving for rate, I'm going to use portion divided by base. And if I'm solving for the base, it's going to be portion divided by rate. Step 3, you substitute and you work the problem. Okay, solving for the portion. Again, a reminder, there's our formula. Portion equals rate times base. Here's our first problem. What is the portion if the base is $400 and the rate is 12%? Portion equals rate times base. We know our rate is 12% times $400. When we're writing a formula or working a formula, we don't work with percent, so we would have to change this to the decimal equivalent. We drop the percent sign, move the decimal 2 places. So portion equals 0.12 times 400 equals 48. Final answer, portion equals $48. Let's take a look at another one. What number is 43.5% of 250? Now these numbers clearly don't say rate and base, and it doesn't really say the word portion, although my screen is telling us we're working on portion. But if it didn't tell us that, when you see the word of followed by a number, of a number is always going to be the base. And the rate, or the percentage, is always going to have percent sign. So again, we're solving for portion. We know the rate is 43.5% times the base, 250. We need to change the percent to a decimal equivalent. Move it over 2 places. Drop the percent sign. 0.435 times 250. And I do not mind if you're using a calculator here with any of these. You plug it in, it equals 108.75. So portion equals 108.75. Let's take a look at solving for the rate. The formula again is rate equals portion divided by base. What is the rate if the base is 160 and the portion is 40? Base 160, portion 40. 40 divided by 160. Again, you put up the decimal point after the whole number. We know how to divide. It's 0.25. We do not leave a rate in decimal, so we change the 0.25 to a 25% or to a percentage. Move the decimal, add the percent sign. Okay, what percent of 700 is 56? What percent, telling us right away, we're solving for rate, of 700 of a number is the base, and so we know 56 is going to be our portion. So, rate equals portion divided by base, 56 divided by 700. Change our 0.08 after we do the division. Move it over twice. Final answer, rate equals 8%. Okay, the last type, solving for the base. Again, the formula, base equals portion divided by rate. Let's try one. What is the base if the rate is 21% and the portion is 58.8? Portion, 58.8. Rate, 21%. Again, we change the 21% to its decimal equivalent. We do the division, 58.8 divided by 0.21. We move the decimal 2 places in our divisor, which means we would have to move our decimal 2 places in our dividend. Again, we talked about this earlier. We do the division, base equals 280. Next one. $550 is 88% of what amount? Of what amount of a number? We know we're solving for base. Portion divided by rate. Our rate is easy to find. We know 550 is our portion. So B equals 550 divided by 0.88. We move the decimal places 2 places in the divisor. We're reminded to remove it again. In the dividend, we do the math. I'm punching it in my calculator now. 550 divided by 0.88. I get an answer of base equals $625. Tips for a successful week. Don't procrastinate. Log in each day. That's how you get attendance credit. So I need you to log in. I'd love you to log in every day, but mandatory every other day. Complete all the reading assignments. Watch the videos. If you don't have those 3 formulas written down, go ahead and write them down, because then it's just a matter of plugging things in. Submit this week's assignments by Sunday. Please contact me and let me help you cross that finish line. Happy calculating. Have a great week, everyone. Take care.